Welcome to Boston Rum Society for those of you who are brand new here. We do weekly Zoom sessions every Monday night, rotating topics, try to keep it interesting. This one is called Taste of Place. We do it about once a month. This is the second one. And we focus typically on a particular region, but this time we're going on a style, which was, as we'll learn, evolutionary over time. Because Navy rum came from multiple islands. So I did a few weeks of research on this, several hours a day, just combing the internet. And whenever I'd think of something I wanted to search for, Matt's website would typically be the first hit. I can't imagine the amount of time and effort Matt's put into this research, because it was readily available for me to find, much of it through his website and the diligence he put already into this.
Thank you.
So if y'all don't know, Matt, he is an author, historian. He wrote the Minimalist Tiki book. He's been doing the Cocktail Wonk website for how long?
2013, so, coming up on 8 years.
Cool. So yeah, we're glad to have you here. I heard a rumor that you've written a book on Navy rum or something along that topic.
I have written a book. It has not yet been published yet, but it's out of my hands at the moment.
Cool. So I know you self-published Minimalist Tiki. Have you considered that for this one, or are you?
So the Navy rum book was done for Misinformation. They in the middle of while I was writing Minimalist Tiki, Alexander Gabriel came to me and said, "I'd like you to research," and it wasn't just Navy rum, but also London dock rum, to go back to the original sources and see what was true and what's not. And what I learned is much of what we believe to be true is not true. But I was scrambling to get the Tiki book done so that we could move. And and I was like, I had an insane schedule, and there's no time I had to do this Navy in London dock rum research, and so I naturally said yes. Handed off a lot of the Tiki work to my wife Carrie, who's the co-author of the Tiki book, and off we went into the archives. We went to London. We were in the British National Archives. I've been there twice now. Looking at original sources, from documents going back to the 1680s and that far back. Looking at like the actual naval purchase record from 1910, for example. So yeah, I wrote that book. It's not a hugely long book, but it's it's good size. And Masson Ferran will publish it at some point. They're basically still working on it now, but all of my research and writing and work has been done. So.
Good for you, man.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the term London dock hadn't really come up in a lot of the research I did. So how does London dock rum compare to just a Navy rum?
Yeah, so that's actually in the book. It's a term that got bandied about a lot. In the early 1900s, you would see rum advertised as London dock rum. It's one of those things where most people don't know what it is, but it sounds cool, so they sort of like, I assume it just means some docks along the the Thames in London. And the reality was that for many years there was basically one dock, but it was one place. But that one place, which was the West India docks, and there's still a small portion of them there, but it was the West India docks in East London that had the largest rum warehouse the world had ever seen. 4 million gallons of overproof rum, 40,000 puncheons. And when they started it, they could only work during the day because they couldn't dare light a match or any sort of flammable light source inside of it. So it's this whole fascinating aspect of history that most people don't know at all. And sort of going back to the original sources, like why they built it, and what was the contract they had, and who financed it, and all that kind of stuff. It's quite interesting. But the London dock rum is different from the Navy rum, and that the London dock rum was for the commercial rum, basically rum that was going to be sold to taverns or eventually bottled, whereas the Navy rum was was basically purchased by the Navy and blended in several places, London being one of them, several other, they call them victualling yards. It's spelled Vic. If you read it, it says victualling yards, but pronounced victualling yards. But they basically had three main victualling yards in the UK, all along the south of the UK, and that's where they brought the rum, brought in the puncheons of rum and blended it there. So, you know, they had their own particular desired flavor profile, their own, you know, cost on, you know, what things would cost, and so, you know, the end result was, you know, they're very different. They, you know, the only real commonality was London. So
Very interesting. So yeah, with the research I did, I almost kind of just wrote it as an essay and then put some pretty images to it that were found much on your website and some others I was learning from. So this isn't like a very well rehearsed or prepared presentation, not something I was planning to take on the road. So I'm kind of just going to go through a PowerPoint and kind of read through my notes. And I think maybe keep everybody on mute through this, but I'm not opposed to people jumping in if you have a particular question or something or want clarification. Just unmute yourself, ask it, and go back on mute. And I'll probably just, after each section, maybe check in with Matt, see how accurate the information is that I'm presenting, and see if you can add any additional information. Does that sound good? Cool. All right, let me pull it up and I will share my screen with y'all. All right, so today we're going to talk about the British Royal Navy's daily rum ration. We'll discuss how this blessed tradition came to be, why it was abolished, how proof was established, and what factors constitute a Navy-style rum. So demonstrated here is a centuries-old tradition. Sailors aboard British Royal Navy ships were given a daily rum allowance known as a tot. It was served out of an oak rum tub, like you see here. It was reinforced with brass bands and brass letters that stated either the Queen, God bless her, or the King, God bless him. That's actually a question I have for you, Matt. How come the variants in that? And I've even seen some that said the grog, God bless it, or whatever.
yeah, I mean, in general, you know, it'll be, you know, the king or the queen would change depending on who the monarch was at the time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, they also, hey Mike, they also with the British Armed Forces, they'll actually change all their symbols as well. So for instance, if the ruling monarch is the queen, then like these symbols for the hat badges and stuff will have the queen's crown on top. And if it's a king at the time, then it'll have the king's crown. So
Gotcha.
Yeah, the same thing. I actually have a ration, a 1 ounce ration cup, and on there is, you know, in copper, it actually has ER, which is the current Queen Elizabeth. It's from 1954 or so, but yeah.
Okay, cool. So we might be able to somewhat put a timeline on some of these historic photographs based on if they're king or queen, I suppose.
I'll just add one thing really quick there. You'll notice that all the sailors are holding big pails. Those are not their actual rations by themselves. Those are actually, they're taking that back to their mess. Basically, each mess of like 10 or 20 people or whatever had basically the cook of the mess would go get their ration distributed to them, and then they would take it out and then divide it up amongst the people within their mess.
Right, very cool. All right, so each morning at 6 bells, which is 11 a.m. in layman's terms, the sailors would ritualistically line up with containers in hand to receive their morning tot, following the commencement cry of "up spirits." So yeah, consider that next time you're wondering if it's too early in the day to start drinking. These sailors were doing it at 11 a.m. It's for their first part of their ration.
And less known is that the sailors' response was, "Stand fast, the Holy Ghost."
Very cool. All right, so initially, sailors were allotted 8 ounces per person per day. The tot allowance was reduced twice over the course of a couple centuries until it was fully abolished in 1970. With such vast technological advances, there was valid concerns that regular intake of alcohol would lead to unsteady hands and heads. The Admiralty Board concluded that a daily issue of rum is no longer compatible with the high standards of efficiency required now that the individual's tasks in ships are concerned with complex and often delicate machinery and systems on the correct functioning of which people's lives may depend. So the fact that this tradition lasted as long as it did is actually kind of baffling. We're well into like the age of nuclear submarines and advanced weaponry. Granted, it was only a couple ounces a day, but you know, that was well into 1970 or up to 1970. A point of contrast, George Washington's troops in the American Revolution had a daily 4-ounce rum ration for morale and health. Whiskey eventually took over as a more patriotic spirit, but the American Army's daily ration was abolished in 1830 to limit rowdy behavior, and the US Navy followed suit in 1862. So that's over 100 years before the British abolished their rationing. So this incredible photo here was taken on Blacktop Day. That's July 31st, 1970. Sailors wore black armbands to mark the occasion of the final ration, and even held mock funerals, pouring tots and tubs into the sea in ceremonial burial. So, sad day indeed. Oh yeah, one point I wanted to bring up, Matt. So sailors had the option to get like a stipend in lieu of a ration.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much that equated to, I guess, in more modern times, and what the Navy has done with like the funds that were earmarked for the purchase of rum after that?
Right. Yes, somewhere I have probably what the actual payment was probably a matter of pence at that point. I've never done the math to equate it to modern cost. But it is interesting to note that in the early days, people think like, rum, 1655, it's been everybody was getting rum from that point forward. The reality is that prior to that, cognac, or what we'd call cognac, but brandy was what was typically what the Navy was buying. In fact, it was around 1688 that I have a letter, I actually held in my hands a letter to basically the Secretary of the Navy at the time, saying like, hey, is it okay if we substitute rum for the brandy that we would normally provision to a ship that happens to be in Jamaica? So, it was brandy, it could be Batavia Rock. It was your ration could have been beer, it could have been wine. It didn't really solidify as like the ration is rum until the mid 1800s.
Right. Yeah, you touched on some points that I have for this section here, so thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Jumping ahead. Yeah, so I found this timeline through my internet searching, so I kind of reused it for our purposes. I stole that as well as all the other imagery we're going to see today. But yeah, so it's worth noting that rum was not always the spirit of choice for the British Royal Navy, nor was spirit even the first alcohol used. Going back to the 1500s, a sailor's ration of alcohol was originally 1 gallon of beer per day. That was in part to raise morale, but also because water sitting in oak barrels in the bowels of the hold without any alcohol to kill bacteria would quickly spoil at sea. So beer had a longer shelf life than water, but they'd soon come to realize it would also turn on voyages across the sea. So they needed a more stable solution. Initially, it was a half-pint ration of brandy, or what you said became known as cognac, I guess from the region they were getting it from, or a rock would be used in lieu of beer or after the beer spoiled or ran out. Wine was also used, but it still wasn't as strong or stable as spirit. So how do we land on rum then? Like Matt was saying, Britain started conquering island territories in the West Indies. Barbados in 1629, they started cultivating sugarcane there, and soon after began producing rum. They took over Jamaica in 1655 from the Spanish, and before you know it, they have a plentiful supply of this spirit made of waste material. It was very cheap to produce. So yeah, like you said, brandy was plentifully available near the mainland, so it was the obvious choice.
Cheaper. You didn't have to come from all the way from the Caribbean.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I read in my research is kind of with the Napoleonic Wars between Britain and France with certain blockades and stuff. That's when rum kind of became the official spirit of the Royal Navy.
Right. I mean,
Does that sound right?
yeah. I mean, it also kind of helped that the Jamaican merchants, or basically the group that built the West India docks, basically the West India planters, had a heavy contingent, and they basically politically pressured the Navy to adopt rum because they have a vested interest in, we want the Navy to buy the rum from us.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we got the many faces of Admiral Edward Vernon here. He was a capturer of Portobello, member of Parliament, holder of baton, as illustrated on the right and on his coin on the left. And he was the namesake of George Washington's estate, Mount Vernon. In 1740, facing rampant drunkenness and ill-disciplined sailors aboard his ships, Vernon, the commander-in-chief of the West Indies station, began mixing sailors' half-pint rum ration with a quart of water, some lime and sugar, with the intention of slowing down consumption. This diluted solution, henceforth known as grog, was not only more palatable, the citrus had the fortunate proclivity to ward off scurvy. Did somebody have something?
Yeah, question. Did he also make it twice a day? Is that right? Did he split it up?
Yeah, was Vernon the one that initially did that, or how long was the ration twice a day?
I mean, my recollection was that originally in 1731 it was just once a day, and I think Vernon specified that. My recollection is that 1740 is when he split it in two. It's also worth noting that if I remember correctly, there was the morning ration that had to be diluted, but the evening ration didn't have to be diluted. Also of note, the officers did not have to have it diluted.
Typical.
Oh, good information. So it wasn't for another 80 years after that, in 1823, that the ration was cut from the half pint to a quarter pint, known as a gill. Looks like gill, but it's pronounced Jill. That's what Carl has told me. And I think you had the story on that, Carl. I'm not sure if Matt, you're familiar with that or have an explanation on that.
Let's hear the story.
Carl, unmute, Carl.
There we go. So the measurements of a jack and a Jill are actually, a jack I think is equivalent to, I think, like 2.5 cups or 2 1/4 cups today. And then a Jill is, I think, like 2 ounces. But it was a measurement unit that was actually set by the royalty. And the royalty could actually change it on a whim, based on kind of a usually based on economics, right? So it was kind of a way to control inflation and stuff. And so the rhyme for the Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke the crown, and then Jill came tumbling after, is based on one of those episodes, and I can't remember the exact time frame where that actually happened, where the crown tried to change the amount, and met with quite fierce criticism, and that's where the rhyme actually came from. It was actually a form of protest.
1600s.
King Charles.
I said 1600. Huh?
It was King Charles.
There you go.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. So yeah, I think a Jill was 4 ounces, because it was half of the half pint.
Yeah.
And then like this little guy here, where's my camera? That's the half Jill. So this is a 2 ounce measure. So yeah, so in 1823, it was brought down to a Jill, and then in 27 years later, 1850, they halved it again. So that was the 2 ounce portion, and that's what was served until Black Dot Day, 1970.
It's also important to realize that during this time, the dilution ratios were changed several times as well. It went up and down several times.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, Vernon was notorious for wearing these a grogram cloth coat, earning him the nickname Old Grog. I'm not a textile expert. I didn't know what grogram was, so I looked it up, and it's a coarse fabric made of silk, often combined with mohair or wool and stiffened with gum. So presumably that's what he's wearing in all these images here. He had the nickname Old Grog, and so Grog became the name of his drink. And that's what we still enjoy to this day. So we're going to talk about proof for a minute here. Going to talk about what Navy strength actually means and clear a lot of common confusion. I think this was, I think, Matt, I saw you post this on Reddit a few months back. I'm not sure if that's when you first posted about proof, but information that a lot of people probably don't know. What most people have probably heard is a story about how to prove that the Navy was doling out uncheapened, unwatered down portions, the pursers would test the alcohol by adding gunpowder and lighting it to see if it would ignite to prove that it was foolproof. Supposedly that's where the term came from. But what defines foolproof? In 1818, the Bartholomew Sykes hydrometer adapted into law that a measurement of 100 proof spirit, also known as foolproof, is 57% alcohol by volume. That logic doesn't adhere to today's calculations of 2 times the ABV equals proof, but there's math and science and measurements of degrees and things beyond my comprehension that make it so. 57% is on countless bottles that you see today, including toting Navy strength, including the Golden Devil we're drinking. Smith and Cross has it, Hamilton Navy, even gins like Hayman's, is it the Royal Dock? And Plymouth has their Navy strength. They're all at 57%, and they're all doing it wrong. Because, as you can see in this little excerpt on the bottom there, the issuing strength of rum was at 4.5% under proof. Full proof is 57%, 4.5% under that, which is Navy proof, is actually roughly 54.5%. So of all the Navy rums on the market today, Pusser's Gunpowder is the only one actually doing it accurate.
There's one other one. Black Tot Last Consignment.
Right. I was going to get to that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to get to that later on.
Yeah.
Since that is, I mean, that one's not mimicking a Navy style. That is the actual Navy rum.
So that's your empirical proof right there.
Yep, exactly. Which actually there's, I guess we'll go on that. Because yeah, I did the calculations. It's like 54.4 something when you do the 4.5% under. So it's not exactly 54.5%. The one from Black Todd, the Last Consignment, which is the actual remaining rations from the Navy stocks, I think is bottled at 54.3.
Right.
So it's actually just very slightly under that even. I mean, we're talking, points of percentages, but not 57%. So all these other ones are, perfectly fine, foolproof expressions. They are not actually Navy strength.
Hey, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
Is that math on the screen wrong? Should that be 52.5?
Yep. Everybody asks that question.
Okay.
No, because so you got to that's just subtracting. I did the math as 57%, and then I times it by point, what did I do, like 955 or something like that? Like,
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe Matt, you can maybe explain that better. When you first posted it, I didn't get it at all, and then I finally broke out a calculator, and it made sense.
Yeah,
I see what you're doing. I got it.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly perplexing to people, and once you understand it, you're like, oh, this is not a big deal at all. Essentially, the first thing you have to remember is that the British proof system and the American proof system, not at all the same. Just don't even try to equate them. Don't try to think about American proof. Just put that out of your head. When the British government defined proof, it was technically a definition of like a spirit of which is like 13 parts alcohol to 12 parts water at a particular temperature. That happens to be around 57% ABV, but that's the actual formal definition. And they actually they had hydrometers before Sykes, going back to the 1740s. The thing to think about like British proof is you think of it as like that is like just say that's full strength. Just put the 57 number out of your head. Just say that's full strength. However much alcohol, whatever that alcohol water mix is, that's full strength. Think of that as one unit. That unit is proof. And then imagine if you said, now we're going to specify everything else in terms of that proof. So we're going to say, we say something is 10% overproof. That means it's 10% stronger than, and not 10% ABV stronger, just 10% more than what that proof is. Or 4.5 degrees underproof is 4.5% less than whatever that proof definition is. So when you think about, like, let's say 20% overproof, that would be that you would take 57% and put aside the ABV, just take 57, multiply that by 20%, and you'll get, I don't know, like 11 or so. And he's like, okay, so 57 plus an additional 11, that's what, say, 20% overproof would be. So like I said, there's an article, the article that you took that 1866 thing from, it explains that as best I can. The key point is that Navy strength rum is actually underproof. Also, the last little tidbit is for all the gunpowder stories, like I said, the Navy had hydrometers going back a long time, and I've yet to come across an instance, and I've read a lot of shipboard accounts and this ration ceremony and all that kind of stuff. I've yet to come upon one of, like, somebody doing the gunpowder test on the ship. Basically, it was issued at the correct strength by the victualling yards, and that was it. It wasn't like they were buying rum from random merchants and hoping it was strong enough. It's like, no, the victualling yards issued it at the exact proper strength. As long as nobody went in and diluted it, you're fine.
Right. Within a couple of points of percentages,
right,
as we learned with black tie.
I think that was just alcohol loss through like the corkage or whatever,
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey Matt, did the proving system come about to basically, as a way to measure for spoilage and to make sure that it was, the correct, like, kind of, strength to last on the ships?
Not that I mean, like I said, if you want to geek out, go come across. There's a couple of good documents on, like, the history of alcoholic strength determination, British, and it's just an incredibly esoteric topic. But long story short, basically British, everything comes down to money, and British and all the governments basically wanted a way to be able to tax the producers. And you couldn't just have your tax assessor come along to your distillery and go, like, I think you owe this much money. Like, no, there need to be some sort of measurable measurement. He's like, okay, we've defined it as this much. And so basically they defined a strength, a standard strength. And then if you owed like a set amount based upon if it was proof spirit, and if you made an overproof spirit, well, then they sort of did some calculations and you owe this much additional amount of money. But it was entirely about taxation and revenue. And everything I've seen says that the military forces just sort of went along with the overall government system there.
Fun side note, about a year ago, was it, Mike? I shoot flintlock, and I actually have I have 1F and cannon powder at my disposal. So I actually tried taking some gunpowder proof rum and soaking cannon powder in rum and seeing if it would ignite. And what's interesting is that when the powder actually gets wet, the rum will actually burn around it, to the point where because powder is such it just loves moisture, so it actually will pull the water out of the alcohol and hold that alcohol as the alcohol burns around it. And we tried it like 3 or 4 times, Monica?
Yeah.
And I think we only got it to like kind of barely ignite once, and I think that was literally because there was a piece that we just hadn't got wet. So yeah, we kind of determined at that point that it was probably a bunch of bunk.
Yeah, my understanding was that the actual that test was essentially you put the gunpowder grains in the liquid or into rum, lit it on fire, and then it was like after all the rum has burned off, then does the gunpowder still explode with a bang? That was my
Yeah, and it wouldn't. It basically absorbs moisture like completely out of it, and it would never.
right.
Yeah, almost
It's
never.
also possible they were making different gunpowder with it.
Yeah.
Before I move from this slide, I borrowed this image from your site, Matt. What are they doing here?
They're making Christmas pudding.
Okay.
Not actually a ration being served, but it was a cool image. So
Yeah, I really like it. I like the
Yeah.
faces on everybody. They're very intrigued, as I was.
Yeah. No, there's somewhere I have this story about this cake made for a royal wedding or whatever, and it's just like it's an astounding, it has Navy rum in it. It was looking like 4,000 eggs and 800 pounds of flour and like 2 puncheons of rum or something like that. But yeah, there was this Christmas pudding. It seemed like sort of the creation of Christmas pudding every year. They used some of their rum, and in fact, apparently, like the last rum served to sailors, not counting the up spirits later from the Queen or whatever, was actually served in a Christmas pudding in 1970.
Very fun.
Yeah, they just put some aside. Like we're gonna okay, we're done. We're not serving this anymore, but we're gonna set some aside for some Christmas pudding.
Yeah, Christmas puddings and Twelfth Night cakes are like a huge deal.
Yep.
And there's historical records from the 18th century where there's basically etchings and illustrations of Twelfth Night cakes where it takes like 5-6 men to carry it because it's so heavy.
Mm-hmm.
They're just giant affairs.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to the sourcing side of things. See where Royal Navy rum came from. By and large, naval rum came from territories of the British Empire, notably Jamaica and Barbados in the mid-17th century. Later on, Guyana and Trinidad. In 1784, London-based ED&F Man became the official rum merchants for the Navy, sourcing bulk rum from multiple British territories and creating blends in giant vats, which was cost-effective and efficient. A consistent and exact blend was approved and codified by the Admiralty in 1810. So Matt, do we know if did ED&F Man just source it, or did they come up with a blend as well?
I back up a moment and say all of the information on the slide has appeared on the internet in various forms, and pretty much all of it is incorrect. This is part of what the book I wrote was basically like dismantling a lot of stuff based on the actual documents. For example, the naval rum from Jamaica and Barbados, like, okay, British, we don't have a whole lot of evidence that the Jamaica was actually making rum. Basically, Jamaica was almost abandoned in 1655 when the British took it over. So were there punches of Jamaican rum sitting around? We don't know. I mean, it's entirely possible it came from Barbados at the time. Like, we don't know. But that stuff's is unfortunately not documented. In terms of ED&F Man, they were the official basically supplier of British Navy rum from about 1870 onwards. I have absolutely zero evidence and lots of counter evidence that they were not the official supplier prior to around 1870. In fact, the naval rum purchases from about 1804 on to about 1870 were basically announced in the newspapers, basically like, yep, the Navy bought another 200,000 gallons of rum, and they bought it from this firm, and they bought it from this firm. And some of those firms you may recognize, Lemonheart and Sons, or Alfred Lamb of Lamb's Navy Rum, Henry White. In fact, advertisements of that era and later, basically, like Lemonheart saying, we're the official supplier of rum to the Navy. There's no evidence whatsoever that the Navy was buying rum from ED&F Man prior to, like I said, 1870. And I've looked very, very, very hard for that. Side note there, Guyana didn't actually become British territory until about 1810, 1812. So they probably weren't buying Guyana, basically they probably weren't buying Demerara rum prior to that. And then in terms of the exact rum blend, well, they were buying what was cheap and cost effective. Did they have a flavor profile they preferred? Sure, but all of the records, basically, like I have, like I said, the naval purchase records, like what was bought, what was being bought, were do not specify. Here's a specific blend, and we need this much of this much of this rum, this much of this rum. The blend changed substantially over time. For example, during the 1840s, the East Indies, basically India, was basically sort of coming online with their rum making, and they were definitely East Indies rum was part of the Navy blend for several years, and during World War II, they couldn't source enough rum. They literally like we want to buy rum from our colonies, but they couldn't buy enough, and so they ended up having to buy rum from Martinique. Probably wasn't rum agricole, but they had to buy rum from Martinique, and they had to buy rum from Cuba. So the myth that there was some standard blend or some standard recipe seemed wholly made out of whole cloth. There's little evidence. They said they had a flavor profile, yes. Did they have a specific blend? I've seen no evidence of that.
Right. Cool. Yeah, you prefaced my next slide. Again, thank you. So, but would you say before ED&F Man or potentially any of the other people who claim to be sourcing the rum, like in the earliest times when they were picking up rum from the West Indies, do you think it would be just individual barrels from different distilleries that were aboard ships? Like, when did blending come to be?
Great question. I need to go back to the UK. There's some archival research I want to do, but all of the sort of evidence I've seen indicates that the victualling yards, as we know them, the victualling yards are where they had the vats, where they brought in the rum, emptied in the vats, stirred them, all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure you'll get to. Those didn't really come online, at least in terms of the rum part, until the early 1800s. So prior to that, and there is some evidence of this, prior to that, that was basically, okay, wherever the ships are going, buy what they have there. So if you're a ship going out to the East Indies, it'd be like, yeah, go buy a rock, when on port. If you're a ship going to the Caribbean, you're in Barbados, buy Barbados rum. If you're a ship, hanging out off the coast of Spain, go buy Spanish brandy, or go buy wine. It was sort of like the provisioning was done in the fields by basically like contract suppliers, and like whatever those contractors had or told the Navy they could get. And so there was no attempt to make everything. Here is the one rum that everybody gets.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, even thinking back to when it was strictly brandy or a rock or whatever, I can't imagine they were blending from different suppliers. Like,
Yeah.
Like outside of like Scotch whiskey, like that have, blended scotches, it's kind of unheard of to blend different varieties of a spirit. So it's, the fact that this came about when it did, like, what would happen if we mix, for example, Jamaica and Barbados, like what would the flavor profile be? It's just interesting that they even had the fortitude to come up with a system to do that.
Right.
Because you would never think to do that with any other spirit.
Yeah, I mean, beyond the Navy from 18. You got to remember the rum industry itself was rapidly evolving. We didn't have the same styles that we do now, in the 1700s and early 1800s. But basically, the Navy was basically putting out a notice to vendors like Lemonheart, and we want to buy rum. Show us what you got. And they would, and these were not like, show us your Guyana rum or show us your Jamaican rum. It was like, show us the rum. And so it was whatever those vendors had, and then the Navy buyers, purchased, the lots that they thought were good. And again, there was no evidence I've seen of like specifying particular countries or whatnot. That didn't really come till later, from what I can tell.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. So we're going to talk about how it changed over time. So where was I at here? Yeah, I mean, despite the vatting systems that we talked about to make a consistent blend, plenty of factors would lead to changes and variances over time. Distilleries would come and go, production methods evolved. Early stocks from Jamaica and Barbados would very certainly be on pot stills. Industrial column stills started surfacing in the Caribbean by the end of the 19th century. Or what do you know when the earliest column stills came? I know BDL was like, or not BDL, but the West Indies rum distillery was.
West Indies was 1893, but we started seeing basically columns came to the British Caribbean generally later than the rest of the Caribbean. I've looked really hard, and basically column stills sort of started popping up in the French and Spanish colonies around 1850.
Right. And then places like Jamaica were very slow to adapt, and it was more like mid 1900s when Jamaica did. Which brings me to my point here: these incredible documents that you unearthed, showing the Navy's distaste for Jamaican rum. So, despite most Navy blends that we have on the market today that have a strong Jamaican component,
It tastes good.
Right. There's multiple documentation showing that it wasn't a flavor profile that the sailors liked. Plus, its popularity to the public made it prohibitively expensive for the Navy to stock it. So, seems like by the early mid 1900s, the Jamaican component was mostly lost in the blends. This is one of my favorite things that you drudged up. It's purchase order from
favorite juice of all time. So yeah.
So you mentioned puncheon a couple times. What is the size of a puncheon?
You get different numbers, but basically from triangulating a bunch of different descriptions of it, seems to be around 108 to 110 imperial gallons. So in US gallons, it's like 140.
So the breakup here, I mean, obviously PM is Port Morant, you have Versailles. Are these distilleries or particular marks?
Those are marks.
Gotcha. Very cool. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that even back then there was a premium on Port Morant.
Exactly, as there should be. It's a remarkably inefficient still and very temperamental, but it is my favorite still in the world.
So yeah, say it again. Victualling? Is that how you say it?
Victualling.
Victualling yards.
Take away the C.
Okay, victualling yards. So yeah, this is some of the containers that the rums would be stored in. Basically, these are starting vats. So they would put the rums from all the different sources that they get them from, and they let them rest in these vats that were all connected, and let them mingle for a couple of years. Do you know what these are made of? Are these stainless or are these wood?
These probably are. I believe those are wood. I mean, they were definitely. I know in the 40s that they were made of wood. There's basically like a very long document I have basically describes the tribulations of basically moving some vats from London up to Scotland, I think during the war, in part to protect some of the rum. And I'm pretty sure that they were talking about basically disassembling the wood staves and reassembling them. But those pictures, those vats there, those are the small ones, those tiny ones.
Yeah, so those are, like it says here on the side, 4,000 to 30,000 gallons. So these are definitely the miniature ones on that spectrum.
Question, Mike?
Yeah.
Or for Matt. I know ships are different sizes, but is there any numbers on the typical amount they leave port with? In gallons?
I mean, I've not seen that any specific reference to that, but I'm assuming that they, you're like, okay, here's how many sailors, here's how many going to get a ration per day, here's how long we expect you'll be out, and supply you with at least that much. It was certainly allowed to provision in the field, like they did. It was like They didn't assume like we have to be extra careful and supply you with far more rum than you would ever need. And I would imagine the pursers probably wouldn't want an oversupply because at some point they were basically responsible for lossage.
Yeah, from after they spent a couple years in the starting vats, they transferred to the issuing tanks. They'd be proofed down to the issuing Navy strength, which is below proof. And those tanks are 18,000 gallons each. There's 2 of them. So from there, they would.
And just to reference, this is one biddling yard. This is describing the one in London. There were 2 other ones which presumably had a similar vatting system and tank system, but the numbers and the quantities may have been different.
Yeah, massive amounts of rum. But yeah, getting back to what I was asking about, if they were wood or stainless, because presumably most of the stocks of rum purchased from the islands were unaged or very minimally aged. So the only time they'd have in wood is through transport across sea. But I suppose if these are wooden tanks, they're taking on some component of aging while they're resting.
Well, I mean, if they need to be continuously used, otherwise they'll start to leak. But yeah, I mean, at some point you're going to lose any extractive aging from them. They're going to go neutral. You'll certainly still get oxidative aging. They were described as open topped. Now, whether that means completely open or covered, loosely covered, another mystery that I've been trying desperately to find out. They said there is a great story about a dog that went missing, and they assumed it fell into one of the vats. And then when they finally came time to clean the vat, empty the vat out, basically cleaned the vat, like you emptied it out, and they expected like you'll see like either a dog skeleton or a very well pickled dog at the bottom, but there was no dog to be found. But what they did find was a whole bunch of bottles with pieces of string tied to the neck. And you're like, what the hell? Why is there all these bottles with string tied to the neck? And the string was pretty long, and they realized it's like, oh, the string is long enough for a worker to basically, when he's not being watched, basically drop a bottle in, fill it up, pull it back out. And if somebody happens to walk by, you just drop the string and the bottle goes bye-bye. So that's the kind of stuff we use as evidence that they were open top, that they were not like sealed, because you wouldn't have that happening.
So, I mean, what would be the reasoning for having them be opened? I mean, there's obviously, I mean, it's spirit at proof, so it's not gonna, there's no fermentation or anything.
No, I mean, it's not gonna be at proof. I mean, it's gonna be higher. The rum that they were putting in was typically 80% ABV. And then over time, it would diminish. And certainly the evaporation is going to reduce the proof somewhat. And I don't know how much water they would have needed to add. But yeah, some of the one of the things that aging does, we all focus on the flavor extraction, like what the flavors you pull from the wood, but also just the evaporation. One of the things that happens is like the lighter elements are the first things to go out, and those lighter elements are kind of heads. They're like the stuff that you don't necessarily want, and so putting in an open vat is a good way to get rid of the undesirable head component. At least that's my understanding by talking to people who do this for a living. So
right, that's logical. Cool. All right. So with everything that we've learned up to now, what is Navy style? Obviously there was no set formula over a sustained amount of time. The rums in the blend would change. If places like Barbados was transitioning into column distillation, the flavor profiles would change. Certain distilleries going out of production. So it seemed pretty fluid over time. So depending on what period of time you're drinking it, I'd say probably in the 17th century, potentially you could be drinking like a single estate, single mark like pure pot still rum from Jamaica, which is what I like to do. And that would have been happening 300 years ago. But then 100 years later, it would have been a blend of multiple countries. And 100 years after that, you'd have a mix of pot still and column still from multiple regions. So it just kept evolving depending on what period of time you're looking at. So yeah, the formula for the very last rum, the stocks that the Navy had when the tot was abolished, where is that? It's said to be, you have this, Matt, I think it was 60% Guyana, 30% Trinidad, and 10% mystery meat.
Yeah, I think that 10% changed over time. I think at some point it was some Australia. I know 39 it was Natal and Mauritius. I forget. We have basically there's a 1966 video that the Navy were Navy guys saying what their ratios were. Obviously, Charles Tobias says he was told the official Navy recipe, which only four rums. The other thing in there when we talk about the Trinidad, it was Caroni. Like we know it was Caroni.
Yeah, which lends such a distinct flavor, and being 30% component of the blend, it's hard to say that anything in the last 20 years since Caroni closed, with the exception of certain Valier releases, or since for those who don't know, Caroni and Trinidad closed I think around 2002, and Luca Gargano from Valier bought the remaining stocks that he's been selling off for the majority of it.
Not even the majority.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Where did the rest of it go then?
Angostura got first pick.
Did they?
Yes, and then there was Maine Rum did the valuation for it. So there was basically there's this legend that Valier showed up and like discovered these unknown casts that just happened to be laying around. Like no, there was already fighting in Trinidad over the value of it as early as 2001, and Maine Rum Company had gone and done a valuation, put a price on it, et cetera, and they basically Angostura got a pick out of it. Some of it went to like the John Barrett, who's getting the name of the blend. Bristol. Yeah, Bristol. There's a lot of it out there, and in fact, in 2008 they were like, yeah, we still have some Caroni we can't sell. So it wasn't like he bought up all the stock. There was like it went to a number of places. So just say that.
Well,
also,
it seems like
I'll note as well is that when we think of Caroni, we think of like, oh, this is the Caroni that we're drinking today. They made light rums as well. Like we don't actually know specifically. We don't know that the Navy's Caroni was the petrol bomb that we have today.
Well, I will say, having had Black Tot, that it certainly is in there.
Certainly seems like it could be.
Right. Yeah. Whether the 30% Trinidadian component is all Caroni, that's unclear.
Exactly.
Because just in this Valier Royal Navy, this very old blend, the Caroni component is, does it say on here? Forget what percentage it is, but it dominates at I think a small percentage.
Far more than in the last consignment, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, there's no telling what went into any of the Navy blends. So it's silly that we have all these different marketed Navy rums on the market today, because what are they chasing? What are they actually putting out? How accurate are they? This photo on this main photo here, I think you posted this on Reddit as well for an article you did on Cocktail Wonk. And that was the one that I was like, this is such a beautiful site that I was like, I need to do some more research. And this was kind of the impetus for me even putting this thing together, was this image here, just thousands of flagons. Do we know what time period this is?
I think there's a date on that image. That The site is the Imperial War Museum. Yeah, I forget. I think it's either somewhere between 1910 and 1930, I think.
Yeah.
Could be wrong though.
So the story I heard, I haven't actually seen this published anywhere, but last year on Black Tot Day, when Whiskey Exchange did their 24 hours of Black Tots, like just interviews with different people in the industry and stuff. The guy, I never remember his name, the owner of Whiskey Exchange, told the story.
Sukinder, yes.
Yeah, he was telling the story of how he came across I think it was 2,000 flagons of the last consignment, the final stock that the Royal Navy had when the ration was abolished. So basically, it sat in a warehouse for about 40 years. You know, this ginormous stock that was maybe tapped into for like royal weddings and certain events and stuff, but otherwise just sat dormant for 40 years in these flagons. And I guess they're going to do some renovations to the building at one point or demolish the building. So they just had like a liquidation sale. And I think it was a wine merchant that originally picked it up. So these flagons, like you see on the right here, with the wicker surrounds, started showing up at different bars and on the secondary market. And so it was the guy from Whiskey Exchange, like, where is this all coming from? So he started doing research, and I guess the wine merchant who had bought it all was up to some devious deeds or something, and they went bankrupt or they had to liquidate. So then he was able to procure the remaining stock minus what was sold off of the maybe 6 months or a year after the wine merchants got it from the Navy. So then he bottled it as the Black Tot last consignment, seen there on the bottom. It's a beautiful rum. I bought one myself. It's a taste adventure, and there's very few rums on the market that compare to the flavor of it. Which brings us to Pussers, because Tobias, wasn't it Charles Tobias? His goal when starting the Pussers Company in 1979 was to mimic what the Royal Navy was making up until 1970, because he had tried rum from a flagon. And so he supposedly got the recipe that was last used, which was that 60-30-10 that we talked about. Now Pussers over the course of 40 years has gone through numerous formulation changes, with times closing of distilleries, namely Coroni. But even just in recent years with their gunpowder proof, which is at 54.5% accurate Navy strength, was originally a blend of Guyana, Trinidad, and Barbados. And then it changed to, I think it was Guyana and Trinidad. And then it was just Barbados for a short time.
I think it was just bottled in Barbados. I don't think it was actually Barbados rum.
Okay. Yeah. Currently, it's only a product of Guyana. 100% of it comes from Guyana. That's not to say that it doesn't potentially have elements that were in the Navy's blend, but I don't imagine at any point in time the Navy's blend was 100% Guyana. So the fact that they're advertising that this is in accordance with the Admiralty's blending recipe last used, when it's a product of just Guyana, take that with a grain of salt.
Right. Yeah, I mean, basically, they're blending to the flavor profile, and if any distillery has the range of distillates to be able to blend to that flavor style, it's DDL. Because for one thing, they have Port Morant, nobody else does. But DDL, DDL can make high ester stuff. They can make very light rum. They're probably the best equipped single distillery to do something like this.
Right. All right. So that's pretty much what I've got on this history. Sorry that ran kind of long. So we can get to the tasting unless, Matt, you have anything else you want to add.
Keep going.
All right. Well, hopefully we all still have rum left. Yeah, we could start with, maybe we'll start with the Pusser since we were just talking about that one. So it's 100% Guyana from DDL. DDL does have the heritage stills that, what's what I'm looking for? As distilleries closed and they pretty much consumed like the historic stills from Port Morant and and Versailles and Saval and all those. So they potentially have components that were in that Navy blend. But like we were just saying, it doesn't have any of the other elements, but it is at the right proof. So it has that going for it. So
I mean, I
Pusser,
would say Port Morant is sort of like fundamental. Like you can't do a true Navy rum without Port Morant. It is a flavor profile that without it, it's not wouldn't be a Navy rum for me.
agreed. While they wouldn't spend the premium on Jamaican rum, they'd pay extra for the Port Morant back in the day. So it's an important element. Port Morant produces my favorite rums in the entire world. On the nose of this, I get a heavy dose of molasses and kind of like cardboard. And kind of like just old wood. And I think that's some of the element of the Port Morant.
Maybe a little leather.
Sugar and molasses.
Super molassesy. Anybody else have want to chime in on any notes they're getting?
I did notice on the previous page when we were looking at the Pusser stuff, one of their tasting notes was treacle, which I feel like is just slightly different from molasses. It's a little, to me, it's a more specific experience, and I kind of get that sort of like treacle syrup thing going.
Yeah, I get like a lot of like a burnt sugar or burnt molasses, which maybe is similar to that profile.
Yeah.
I'm also getting something very green hidden in the back.
I get lots of green. For me, that's
Yeah,
like
it's
Port Morant just pops out like
yeah.
right, that green. It's almost like a like you were in a forest and there's a giant vine and you just like green vine and you just cut it and smell it. Sort of green chlorophyll kind of note.
Yeah, it's punching through a little bit more now.
The first taste was really sweet. No, it's not.
Let's see, before you kill that, go to the next one. Let's go with the Golden Devil. So this is a blend of Guyana and Jamaica. From what I read, the Guyana portion is column still, and the Jamaican portion is pot still, which would mean there'd be no Port Morant in this. And there'd be that Jamaican component, that pot still that the Navy didn't approve of, at least not in the last century or so.
Now, I do have a question on this particular bottle. Obviously, Mike, we've talked about the Golden Devil 12-year single barrel, which was Hamden. Is the Jamaica portion of this Hamden, do you think, or is that just coincidence?
It's not disclosed. I mean, they're an independent bottler, so they source from multiple distilleries. I'm not sure if Golden Devil has done a Worthy Park release or not. I get this kind of strawberry bubblegum note in this, which is indicative of Hamden.
Yeah.
So my guess
I
would
was
be
gonna
Hamden.
say it's got that same kind of like that what you once called big league chew, and what I kind of pick up is like a freshly blown out candle, like a slightly burnt candle.
Yeah, I get like banana Laffy Taffy. So yeah, there's definitely a strong
strawberry, definitely.
Yeah, strawberry.
And this is the most interesting one to smell out of the three of them, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think that's, the Guyana component, like I said, is column. I can only imagine if they would have done a Hamden and a Port Morant, but unfortunately that's not what we have.
Yeah, I'm not going to say my palate is the best, but I definitely like to notice certain similarities of Smith and Cross and Jamaican and sort of like that. I get a Worthy Park note. It's that sort of like black tea Worthy Park note more so than the crazy sort of like weird Hampton note. So as I said, everybody's palate is different, and I've already been drinking plenty of Pusser, so.
I get this drink too.
Yeah, I think
I wouldn't be surprised if there's. I mean, if there could be, like a small little bit of like Hampton, the highest or Hampton, but the majority being like Worthy Park, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Ray and Nephew Overproof. I'm not sure if that's from Worthy Park or something, but
no, that's from
less
New
heat.
Yarmouth.
New Yarmouth.
Okay, yeah, less heat. but it's very similar flavor profile. In my
I
opinion.
like the sweetness at the end. There's a little bit of sweetness after the heat on this one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And almost like there's a lingering on the finish of like almost like a fresh green olive.
Speaking of sweetness, I did have a question about the Pussers. If I'm not mistaken, most of their bottlings have some amount of dosage. Is there any, is that true of the gunpowder proof, and is there any history of that in Navy style bottlings?
I read somewhere recently that there's equal amounts of sugar in gunpowder proof as in Eldorado 8, I believe, which is
Not
there, but not heavy like their 15 and 21 Eldorados. I want to say it's in the maybe like 8 to 15-ish grams per liter range.
I looked it up while we were talking earlier. It said, Google said 7.
Okay.
7.
So fairly light.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, can you go back to a couple slides to the thing with the 1939 vittling? Keep going, keep going, keep going. Stop. Go forward. Oh, there, right there. Yeah. So in that bottom right image, which is about the blend. If you that's from the 39 vittling manual. If you go forward, don't go forward. But it's saying if you read forward in the manual, there's a section in there about caramel, and that the caramel they put in it provides 2 degrees of obscuration, which would be basically a 2% difference reading on the hydrometer. And 2 degrees of obscuration with E150 would make it undrinkable. So smart people on both sides of the sugar discussion have weighed into the topic, but I'm in the camp of that it was like a sweeter caramel they were putting in there.
Yeah, what in one of the interviews with can't remember the guy that's like I think he's the master blender at DDL.
Oh, Sean.
Yeah, he was saying how that's a traditional method that they had was to put the caramel in the barrels for coloration, but it wasn't the E105A or whatever it is. It's like their own
150, right? Yeah. Well, this would have been the Navy themselves doing it.
Right. So I don't know if any of these others have any dosage at all. I don't know. I don't know that Golden Devil would put something out that has any sugar additives in it. Maybe coloring. Yeah, I mean there could be caramel in the Golden Devil because
I mean,
I don't imagine this is aged long enough to produce that color.
Yeah, I mean, if you put enough E150 in, you're going to start tasting it.
Right. But whoever mentioned the comparison to Smith and Cross, I do see that a lot in that Golden Devil, which makes me think it is, a decent proportion of Hamden in there. I guess there is
so people think Smith and Cross is all Hampton, which is not.
I was just going to say that, which most people associate Smith and Cross as 100% Hamden. I've seen things out there that it is a blend, although I've not seen reliable certainty on that. So
I've heard from the most authoritative source you can imagine. So
okay, cool. But yeah, I definitely it's bottled at the same 57% as Smith and Cross. I imagine the rums in there are 3 years old or younger. So it definitely would have similarities to Smith and Cross. I originally had planned to do the Hamilton Navy instead of this one. I decided to throw this in as a wrench because most people haven't tried this one, being that it's a K&L exclusive and not available in Texas or New Orleans or wherever anybody else is. So I don't know how this compares to the Hamilton Navy. I've not done a comparison, but the Hamilton is also a blend of Guyana and Jamaica and bottled at 57%. So I don't know what the proportions are and the actual sourcing from the distilleries are.
Yeah.
When you say that, Mike, I actually poured myself a tiny bit of the Hamilton Navy while we're sitting here, and it comes across as a lot more Jamaican-y to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it shows you that, small amounts, just like small amounts of Corona can cut through, small amounts of Hamden or Worthy Park can cut through a column distillate Guyana, So, I mean, it might only be 20% of the blend or something.
But it's there. The Golden Devil, I like it, but I don't get the Port Morant note. So I'm not up into. Okay. It's I perfectly lovely rum, but I wouldn't call it Navy style.
Right. And oh, funny note on that. It was originally called, I think it was called Golden Devil Overproof. And they changed it because maybe it was better marketing to call it Navy style. But the funny thing about that is at 57%, that's, it's technically foolproof or what today we call overproof. So they named it right when they changed it to Navy style. Well, it's not Navy proof anyway. And it's not necessarily Navy style either. So, but then again,
That's why
neither
there's
is
air quotes around it.
right. But neither is,
Navy
Hamilton.
style.
Hamilton Navy strength is not really Navy strength or Navy style either. So that's what I'm saying. Like we're chasing something that can't be replicated.
There are some people I may not be popular with.
Viewers are driving nuts that they don't put the Navy style in one line.
But,
All right, we want to go to the Black Tot. So in case anybody was confused, this is not the Black Tot finest or last consignment. This is the finest Caribbean. This is not the remaining
Only
stocks.
$4. What a steal.
Right. Yeah, my $4 sample did not buy you portions of my last consignment. So this is a new blend that just came out in the last year, maybe. I took notes on this one because they're actually very transparent about what is in this blend, which I very much appreciate. So it's 60% Guyana, 40% of which is 3 to 5 year blend of pot and column, and the other 20% of the Guyana portion is unaged pot and column blend. So yeah, the 60% makeup from Guyana, you have unaged and slightly aged pot and column blend, which presumably would be Port Morant at least. Then 35% is 5-year-old pot and column blend from Barbados, and only 5% is Jamaican, which is 3 years old and pure pot still. So I think they, as far as accuracy, according to, the 1900s, 20th century Navy blend is the closest of the bunch. The fact that they bottled this at 46.2% is what really saddens me and
I think
makes it way off the mark.
I think it's a consumer. The cost, basically, the higher your strength, the higher the excise taxes. And I think they were trying to hit like a $40 price point or something like that.
Right. Yeah. This one comes in around 50, and I assume that it was to make this where people that are into the premium rum game that it's still within their reach without getting into like super premium. But I just feel like if you're going to do a black top rum or a Navy style rum like this, do it at the bright proof, and I'll pay the extra $20 or whatever.
Yeah, Mike, I don't know if you might know this or not, but I have a friend that works at Specs, and they've done some tastings, and he gets some sort of a kickback. I don't know if it's a percentage or $1 a bottle or whatever it is when he sells this particular rum.
Yeah, having worked at Specs very temporarily, I can vouch for that. $2 a bottle. So,
there you go.
But you know what? Jason, I think Jason's on the call still. You were in the store and you're like, do I need this? And I was like, nah. I could have made my
story behind it for an individual, for like consumers that don't know any better, they can see this and you can sell it pretty easily with spinning a story. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, but for a friend of mine who I know his palate, I was like, if I can make my $2 off of your purchase, I don't need this.
Thank you.
You don't need this
for this night. I think it's fine. It's a decent rum. Again, I wish the proof was higher.
You know why they chose to bottle it at a less traditional?
What Matt was just saying, it could be, something with taxes or just trying to keep it at a certain price point for consumers.
Yeah, they have black pot last consignment, which is what, $1,000. They have black pot, like whatever the Demerara is, $4,000 a bottle. They have black pot 50th, which is like $150 a bottle, and it's natural, sort of like try to basically build a consumer brand, where you're selling thousands of cases a year, not hundreds. So
yeah.
And baby step them in at a lower proof as well. You know, not everybody's palate's going to take the 57, 54% stuff as easily.
Yeah.
What I could say,
I agree. Like I would like all my rum to be, you know, proof strength or higher, but I'm also a realist. I know, you know, what things cost and what you know their concerns are. And it's like, you know, believe me, Mitch and I have gone around this around and around and around. We're very good friends. So.
For, you know, granted, many of us are kind of seasoned drinkers here, but you know, the ones at 57 and 54.5% that we tried previous to this, I didn't find them to be hot. I found them to be well balanced. This one I just
hot, but not the Pusser.
I'd say there's a heat. It's not like unpalatable, but I know some friends of mine who would be like, "Ooh, no, it's too much." So
yeah,
practice drinking.
I'm just finding that the Black Tot Finest Caribbean just falls very flat. I mean, considering what the blend is, considering that there is.
I mean, it also depends the order you're drinking it, you know.
Yeah, we should have started with this maybe.
Yeah.
I started with the Black Tot and it was still thin and hot.
The Black Tot was sipping hot?
Yeah, it felt, and the texture is just thin.
Yeah, it's very thin. It just not a lot of notes are coming to me on the nose or on the palate.
I mean,
yeah,
I would happily use it in a cocktail. I mean, the style, the character and the balance aren't far off from what I'm looking for in just like a mixable dark rum. But
yeah, it'd be interesting to try it in like a Navy grog or something. See if it
I'll just stick to Hamilton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anybody else have any other tasting notes to share on any of these?
I think I'd rank them for me, Golden Devil, Pussers. I did pour a little bit of the Hamilton, and then the Black Tot I'd probably put at the end. But I'd like to try the Black Tot when, you know, it's just on its own, like instead of followed by all these other higher proof rums. But that's how I would rank them.
Who else wants to rank their three?
I might put Pussers at the top, maybe. I feel like it might be a little bit too heavy to mix well. I'm more on the mixing side than the drinking straight side of things, but they're both quite lovely between them and Golden Devil. Black Tot, maybe it's by dint of being the last one in the line, doesn't seem to sing quite as much as I would want it to. But overall, still perfectly acceptable when, you know, toss it in someone's face.
Yeah, I've been drinking the Pusser, no, the Golden Devil. I've been getting some like buttery popcorn notes at the end. Now that it like sits there longer, like I just smell it. I'm like, it's just pure straight popcorn.
Yeah, we were just saying there's like a smell like when you first nose it of like corn pops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
so specific.
I just took a sip of the Golden Devil right before Richard mentioned that, and I get that a heavy dose of that strawberry, which tells me Hamden, and one of their high ester marks from Hamden. But when you said popcorn, to me it's more not a buttery popcorn, but like a caramel popcorn. Like when you buy like those trio cans, and it's like the caramel is one part. It's that popcorn, totally.
Huh.
The Golden Devil is really beautiful, but I feel like it's almost like I'm drinking a Jamaican. And then if that's the case, then I'm not reaching for the right bottle, right? If I want a Navy style rum.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally see that because it doesn't fit the bill for a Navy style.
But it's beautiful.
So it's a very tasty rum. I think I'm ranking this #1 above Pussers as my preference flavor wise, as far as accuracy and being a Navy style or whatever that means. You know, I don't think it fits the bill, but I think it's a really nice rum, and I think it's only about $30-something from K&L. Problem is we just can't get it here easily. But for a $30 mixing rum, this is fantastic, I think.
Yeah. I take issue with their graphic design. Whoever chose to put navy and style on 2 separate lines instead of making them one line where there's plenty of room really pisses me off.
Well, you know the golden rule of rum labels: the shittier it looks, the better it tastes.
So rum fire theory.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I was going off of.
If it looks like monster trucks, it's going to be good rum.
The most visually appealing bottle I've ever seen, probably. Maybe next to Mellow Corn or something.
And there's also Rivers.
Oh, Rivers Antoine? Yeah.
Yeah.
That is not in Texas yet. I want to try that.
Yeah, I just saw TTB approval for it.
Yeah,
oh, that's good.
It's actually I think from January, but I just noticed it. So
right. Yeah, you're usually the one that's on that, right? Like posting it as soon as you see it.
Sometime.
So here's my thing on Pussers. I get this really strong cardboard note that it's very distracting to me. On the nose, it's just fresh cardboard, which I think it's a certain element of the Port Morant, but it's not the Port Morant that I want, you know? Like I'd rather just drink a Port Morant, like an independent bottling of a Port Morant. But it's so much molasses on the palate and so much cardboard on the nose that I just like, I don't know. It's just not complex enough for me. I want it to be more than it is.
I think if I was going to drink one, I would drink the Golden Devil. If I was going to make a Navy grog, I'd grab the Pussers.
On this sip, I got much more of a sour note on the Pussers. Like, I mean, I do get some of that kind of weird, like almost like fuel, like industrial notes. That would be indicative of something like Coroni. So I guess it is in there, but I don't know. Comparing it to, like Black Tot Last Consignment, it doesn't have the complexities. Because that's, that rum can it lingers forever and it just keeps evolving, and it's remarkable.
But I would think, knowing what I know about, military food and military things, they're maybe more known for an industrial type, complexity rather than, I mean, it's not supposed to be one of the best rums in the world. It's like they were handing this out to, thousands of sailors every day. So, maybe this may be more true to what people had all those years. I don't know.
I keep coming back to that Golden Devil. I really, really like this Golden Devil.
Yeah.
It's got those high ester notes that you get from like the Savannah HERR and from like DOK and like some of the super high ester rums. It's just that weird strawberry note. Like that's the note I get in those rums that I get strongly in this one. Those rums are just, prohibitively expensive sometimes, or just really hard to get. And this is supposed to be a continuous release from Golden Devil, which is exciting. It's just, the distribution is not going to change on that, I don't imagine. But it seems like it's just going to be a mixing rum they always have on hand there.
It'd be interesting to see if Kill Devil, basically the parent company, has a Navy style they're selling in Europe.
Right.
Or if this is something they're doing custom for K&L.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, I have to sign off now. I have something to attend to, but thank you for having me, and hopefully I haven't babbled on too long. And
thanks, Matt.
Nonsense. Not long enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was awesome.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Matt. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Super enlightening,
Thanks,
man.
All right.
Looking forward to the book.
Me too.
Very much.
Right. Thank you. Bye.
Appreciate all your help. Thank you.